Hey everybody, Nick Marzock with Full Compass. This is a video that I am so excited about. I know Full Compass is so excited about. Shure has a new product that is coming out in 2025, and it's going to change the in-ear monitoring industry. The way you do it, everything is going to be different now. We have Shawn McLoughlin here with Shure to talk about Axient Digital PSM. Can you talk about this brand new, really exciting technology?
Yeah, super excited to be here to talk to you about the launch of our AD-PSM. So this is our newest series of wireless personal monitoring systems, the PSMs or IEMs, as people like to call them. It's part of our Axient Digital ecosystem. So we're now stepping into the digital era for personal monitoring systems.
From the microphone standpoint, Shure, with Axient Digital, Shure's been doing this for years, but this is the introduction of in-ear monitoring that is getting into the digital space. And what are the benefits of that? Like, why go digital? What are you going to gain from that?
Well, there's a lot of advantages for going to digital. Like you said, our Axient Digital series has been out for several years now and has become the touring standard around the world. A lot of big features, especially frequency, spectral efficiency, I guess I should say. So with digital wireless, you were able to get more channels on air. And as we all know, with the changing and selling off of spectrum, a lot of the places, LA, Phoenix, Chicago, there's not a lot of spectrum left for people to use wireless mics in. So obviously this makes a big effect for people who are touring, installs, things like that. So before we had our PSM 1000s, which were kind of the industry standard for touring musicians, but that was an analog system. Mm-hmm. Before we were able to get about 9 channels on air in a 6 megahertz chunk. So 6 megahertz is always kind of the standard that we measure everything in because that's the size of a TV channel in the United States. Axient Digital PSM, AD-PSM, will actually allow you to get 17 channels of PSMs on that same spectral space of that 6 megahertz. And then we also have another mode that we'll get into a little bit later here. With WMAS, they'll actually allow us to pack even more channels, so up to 28 channels in that same 6 megahertz chunk.
Basically, with digital, you're able to be more nimble, you're able to pack more and find the ones that are going to be clear. Yep. Whereas with analog systems, you just might have to either accept interference or really be searching for a while to find a clean channel.
Yeah, so analog just took up more space for those transmissions. When you got 2 frequencies that were near each other, they would start to create what's called an intermod. So they would play off of each other and create noise. So you would have to keep a certain amount of spacing in the analog so you didn't have those intermods, which would create interference. The digital allows you to pack those channels much closer without having that interference because of the digital transmission scheme. The WMAS, which we kind of just touched on, is a newer way of transmitting that is coming out here in 2025 that allows us to pack multiple channels in a very small space. So kind of similar to how a DTV channel works. So if you go to your on-air TV, if anyone uses on-air antennas anymore, you'll notice like you get channel 27, and it'll be like -1, -2, -3, -4, because they can pack 4 different channels in that one transmission. So there's like sub-carriers that allow you to do that. So WMAS is a similar way of transmitting. It allows us to pack more channels in a smaller space and not having to worry about those intermods. So how Shure is doing it is very unique and allows us to cram a lot of channels in that 6 megahertz space in that WMAS mode.
Which also helps with scalability. Whenever you have a large production and a lot of, like now suddenly what used to require a ton of units and fighting over that space, now you're able to pack all of these channels into one and open it up to very massive productions for monitoring.
A lot of the vocals are wireless, you got guitars, and then you got multiple guitars, because what guitarist just travels with one guitar, they got 20, being able to have that spectral efficiency and that density to be able to pack into those smaller spaces is huge.
The sound quality is so important. I know with analog, it kind of compresses sound in order to transmit it. But with digital, are you able to, what is the sound quality difference?
Yeah, so like on a lot of the analog back in the day, like you're saying, it's compressed and then companded on the other end to open that up. And with older analog systems, you didn't get as good of stereo separation, the way that it's transmit. There's a whole lot of nerdy RF stuff that goes onto it. But the digital, you get rid of all of that companding. So there's no companding because you're in the digital space. It's ones and zeros, and how that's being transmitted and interpreted on the receiver. It's kind of like when we went from analog TV to DTV. It got so much clearer, or especially with the new AD-PSMs, you've got much wider stereo separation. So from musicians being able to really kind of have everything panned out the way that they want, it just gives you a better sound quality.
Yeah, a better playing experience.
User experience was what I was looking for. So.
Yeah, like the clarity of your voice, the accuracy of the mix that you're getting sent, like all of this is going to, impact your performance as well. That's a huge benefit. Can you talk about latency on this? Because that's sometimes people's hesitation, or like, can we get into latency at all?
We've got a couple different operation modes with the AD-PSM. So we can get a lower latency and put it in analog mode. In the digital realm,
so this back converts to analog. Like you could also run this
correct,
as analog.
Yeah. Yep. So you can switch it from an analog mode, a digital single carrier mode like our Axient Digital, or you can be digital with the WMAS.
Wow.
So you got a lot of different options with this unit. The AD-PSM is very similar latency spec to what our Axient Digital is. So we're right about 2.9 milliseconds of latency.
Wow.
With that. So the cool thing about the product is it allows you to choose what you're going to do and how you're going to do it.
Yeah. So I want to get now into the products that are going to be coming out with the initial release of Axient Digital. Or Axient Digital PSM, sorry, being thorough. So the ADTQ quad and ADTD dual transmitters, what are the differences? How many channels are you getting? Because I know it says quad, but I see 8 inputs on the back of the of the quad. So what's going on?
So very similar like our Axient Digital microphones. We had duals and quads for receivers, which allowed you to get a lot more channels in a rack space. So touring guys really love that, keeping the rack size down, a lot more channel in that single rack space. So with the AD-PSM, we've got a quad transmitter and a dual transmitter. So the dual is going to give you 2 stereo feeds. So it'll give you actually 4 mono channels. And then your quad will actually give you the ability to do 4 stereo channels of ears or 8 mono channels. And there's some things that are coming, a little bit later that might be able to expand that channel count for you.
If it's not good enough, it's going to get better. And also it has Dante and AES capability.
Yeah, so we can do analog inputs, just regular XLR. We've got AES inputs, and then as well as Dante. And those will be all at 96K sample rate, so keeping that high sample rate for you.
And in addition, there's also the body pack receiver. You have the 4-bay docking stations, all of the things you would hope for and expect out of in-ear monitoring system. Let's talk about software too, because ShowLink, for people that use the Axient Digital microphones, I'm sure you're familiar with ShowLink. Correct me if I'm wrong, the in-ear wireless monitoring system, the Axient Digital PSM, will also, ShowLink is going to basically aggregate all of these wireless components together in one hub.
Yeah, so ShowLink can control on the microphones. Before it was your transmitters. Now on AD-PSM, it'll be your receivers. Control the volume of the pack, change the EQ for the performer, even change a new channel, frequency, without having to go back to the pack and retrieve it like you had to do with some of the older systems. So before, anytime I'd do a scan with a PSM, you'd have to go back, grab the pack, IR sync it to the unit. With the Axient Digital PSM, and the ShowLink, I'll be able to remote control it. So once you've got that initial pairing of the receiver to the channel, your RF tech can go into a venue, turn on, do a scan, deploy all the frequencies without having to go back and touch the pack. So battery savings, you can turn things off, turn things on, and make a whole lot of changes. So
if a channel gets crowded, will Axient Digital PSM automatically route you to an open channel that it's scanning for that is not as much interference?
Yeah, so right now the AD-PSM doesn't have that functionality, but mid 2025, summer of 25, we'll have a firmware update. If it sees there's an RF issue, it can automatically push that out. But at initial launch, you're just going to be doing that manually right now. But soon you'll be able to do that kind of all hands free. So it makes it just the RF tech's job that much easier.
Technology to me is so crazy now that like you buy a product that then can do more things later. Let's talk about spatial diversity. I know that's like a key point of Axient Digital PSM.
Yeah, so we've got the ability on Axient Digital to do something called spatial diversity. So back on our analog systems, if you were to set up two transmit antennas that were on the same frequency, your belt pack that's on your body with a PSM, the receiver would get confused. It doesn't know what antenna I'm looking at that's transmitting that signal to me. So you could have anomalies of audio dropout, weird audible anomalies and things like that. So it just wasn't able to be done. On Axient Digital PSM, because we were doing things in the digital realm, we've got a feature called Spatial Diversity that actually allows us to have two different transmit antennas that are transmitting at the same frequency. So the pack can actually get the signal from both antennas and decipher where it's coming from and process all of those digital bits. Where I get really excited about is I'll be able to actually maybe, a lot of larger tours are doing like a thrust stage or like a B stage out in the audience.
Yep. So Taylor Swift fans have just entered the conversation with the Eras Tour. It's
Yep. So you used to have a bunch of really complex antenna distribution and combining that you were doing of switching to go to a different set of antennas for that forward stage. So this will allow you to kind of have it all done in one of the units. For the people that need to be out on that thrust stage, typically it's going to be your main performer, is doing the acoustic solo, the real intimate thing out front, sometimes you need that coverage. So it's worth it to be able to do that. And now it can all be done in the ecosystem without having to add a whole bunch of other gear, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And like major, productions where there needs to be a producer talking to a bunch of people and they're scattered throughout a venue or wherever they are. Yeah. It's all going to the same ecosystem now. And the pack is going to decipher all of that. Like the pack is intelligent, but it's also, let's talk about the pack. Let's talk about the features of it. What's new, what's exciting?
So Shure really took the time to work with a lot of the engineers out in the field that were using our existing PSM 1000s and kind of like, hey, what do you want? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What do you want to improve on? So there's been some really big updates to the pack itself. It's a pretty thin pack. It does use rechargeable batteries, which come in the ecosystem there. Unit actually ships with 2 batteries, so you got that out of the gate. Runtime, you've got about 6 hours of runtime on a single charge, which is super awesome. You're not burning through AA batteries like you used to before. This sounds like such a trivial thing, but the knob has been redesigned. Your volume knob that's on the top of the unit. It's a nice knurled knob, so a lot of performers really like the ergonomics of it, of how you can feel it, because as being a performer, your pack is normally on your back, so you're reaching around trying to fiddle for the volume knob and make adjustments. So the new knob is a little bit larger, it's tapered, it's knurled, so it's got a good feel to it. But it also went from a potentiometer like you had on the old ones that increased the volume to it's actually a digital encoder now. So you're digitally changing that volume. And that's also kind of how I can remote control it as a monitor engineer through a workbench because it's an encoder now. And it's got nice detents. You know exactly where you are, on the volume perspective.
Oh, whenever you reach back and you do it in a quick panic and suddenly you don't have eardrums.
One other cool thing that Shure has launched with the AD-PSM is being able to do over-the-air updates. So using that AD610, that show link, I can now push firmware when there's firmware updates to the pack over the air. Before, I used to have to hold it up. There's a little IR window that you'd have to hold up, and it would take about, a minute and a half. So you get all super creative, rigging up like mic stands to hold them, and it just took forever. So now you can actually do a firmware to a whole bunch of packs all at the same time over the air. So it makes it super friendly for the, the RF engineers that have to manage doing software updates and firmware updates and things like that.
When you say it's rechargeable batteries,
Yeah.
Are they removable batteries or are they
So they're removable batteries. It uses the same batteries that's in our ADX1 transmitter, so on the microphone side. So it's a SB910 is the model number. So it's something that people might already have. Like I mentioned, each pack comes with 2 batteries. But yeah, you can pull them out, you can recharge them. The packs also have charging contacts in there. So we have a new dock that'll hold 4 receivers that you can just slot in there, charge the battery, pull it out, put it on your Talent, or you can pull the batteries out and put those in the charger. So we've got a couple different charging options for those batteries, from docks to rack mount, devices and things like that.
You can monitor battery life from the show link as well?
Yep. Yeah. So with Workbench, you can see exactly how many hours and minutes left of a charge. So again, it just helps those technicians be able to be like, oh, hey, we're getting close to the time where we need to swap out a battery. So
that's so great. And then the combiners. Let's talk about combiners, because this is also something that comes with digital that is an upgrade in technology.
Yeah, so there's new antenna combiners. There's actually 2 different units. There is an 8-port one and then a 2-port one. So they're different in what they do, but they're a passive combiner. So they're designed to work with the digital systems and be able to handle that RF output that's on those digital systems. But the 8-port one's got a bunch of different features. So it can be used as an 8 input to 1 antenna, so an 8-to-1, or it can be used as a 4-to-1 times 2, so I could have 2 4-to-1s, depending on what you want to do. So that's a cool thing. There's a lot of different transmission modes and power outputs and a whole bunch of things that AD-PSM can do. But the cool thing with the combiners is typically with combining for a transmit antenna, those are all passive combiners. So there's always going to be signal loss depending on how you're using it. So the 4-to-1 is going to have a different signal loss than 8-to-1 just because of the way that you're combining the signals. But one of the cool features about the new antenna combiners is through the BNC cables that talk back to the normal transmitter, they can communicate and share how the combiner is being used. So the combiner, let's say, is going to be using, I'm an 8-to-1, so I'm going to have potentially like 11 dB of signal loss.
Yeah.
But what it can do through the B and C connector cable is talk back to the transmitter and say, hey, I'm going to lose about 11 dB of output because of the combine. And it'll tell the receiver to actually have some loss compensation. It'll actually change its output to overcome some of that loss that you're doing from the combining. So you're always getting the maximum power that you can out of the unit based on how you've got things hooked up and how you're using it.
So it's doing that automatically. It's doing
it automatically. Yeah.
Wow. It's like a compressor's makeup gain. It's like
kind of, yeah.
So a front of house engineer, you have a bunch of different transmitters. You don't need to have an antenna for everything. They can interfere with each other. You can combine that all into one antenna, and it'll be cleaner from a footprint standpoint and also cleaner audio-wise.
Yeah, so footprint-wise, I don't have a bunch of antennas because if you think about it, if I had, a 5-piece band, I would have 5 separate antennas for each person's PSM.
Yeah, you look like a pirate ship, like back there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, from an RF perspective, because you are doing transmit with multiple antennas, when you've got multiple antennas, you got to have them spaced a certain distance apart to not cause intermodulation from those different transmit signals. So by doing an antenna combiner, it's kind of bringing all of those separate signals down to one antenna to transmit. So you get less intermodulation and less RF issues also.
The I'm going to say it the cool way, the AD-PSM, it's announced today, but it will start shipping when?
Yeah, so it's going to start shipping in January of 2025. So just couple months away, get those Christmas orders in, you want to be the first of the game. But yeah, Shure is ready to get shipping at the beginning of the year to make sure that we're out for that next, 2025 kind of touring season. All the engineers are going to love this product. So.
Yeah, especially like Shure you have SM4, Nexidine, now ADPSM. I think you guys need to chill out. I think there's too much.
There's some other cool stuff coming. Keep your eye out. We're not stopping.
Give Full Compass a call. We are here to help you, the pro, with all of your wireless in-ear monitoring, and now it's digital wireless in-ear monitoring. This is so exciting. Shawn, thank you so much for jumping on and talking to us about all things ADPSM.
I appreciate you having me on, and I'm sure we'll be doing some other follow-up content as products start shipping, showing how everything works and how it can help you.
Again, go to fullcompass.com or call your sales rep, 800-356-5844. They are there to answer all of the questions that you have about this. Keep it right here at Full Compass for more content, especially about ADPSM by Shure.